Halldóra Mogensen still has one final presentation before open discussion and a round table with everyone. So, yes, from Pirate Party Iceland, Halldóra, the voice is yours.
Hey, thank you. Maybe I start by introducing myself. So my name is Halldóra Mogensen and I'm a member of parliament for the Icelandic Pirate Party. And we have been, can everyone hear me, by the way? Is that okay?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, okay, fantastic. So start by saying that the universal basic income won't obviously be adopted overnight. So the more we've been thinking about it, and I've been thinking about it in terms of how it would work in Iceland, is I lean towards the idea of adapting our pre-existing welfare system and current personal tax credit system in steps towards the goal of merging them into an unconditional basic income system. I believe it to be incredibly important that these steps be taken in context of a much larger ideological shift as regards to our kind of entire economic system, which is a little bit what I hear also other people saying here. Rethinking our economy is an important part of the conversation, so also just detoxing from our addiction to economic growth, replacing gross domestic product with a healthier and better way of measuring the success of our societies. Our task is to lay the groundwork and to incentivize the growth of a new economy. So I can kind of envision a grassroots economy where everything sprouts from the ideas and passions of regular people. An economy that catches us when we slip and evolves around the needs of people instead of molding people's lives around the needs of the economy. A bottom-up approach to economic thinking instead of the current kind of wishful thinking that corporations will somehow trickle our well-being down to us, which is very much the kind of neoliberal way of looking at the economy. As my party stated in its last election campaign, you can't have a true and functioning democracy if people don't have the flexibility, time and resources to participate in democracy. So that's why we advocated for it. Was a huge part of our campaign now. We advocated for a new economy with the aim of creating a free, equal and abundant society. And a redistributive policy like universal basic income is key to this economic shift, and something that I've been fighting for and kind of creating a conversation around in Iceland since I started, really since 2013, when I was kind of first coming into Alþingi in Iceland, to the parliament. But to tackle the root of inequality, I think we have to do more. You know, we have to look beyond income redistribution and look at democratizing the very ownership of wealth and redistributing sources of wealth as well as income. So one of the core ideas of the Pirate Party is based on like democratizing the ownership of ideas. So moving away from this stagnant copyright system to a free worldwide network of open source design. So slowly redistributing economic power from corporations to individuals, creating a transparent knowledge-based society and aiming for a sustainable utopic or utopian future. I think this is a key point if we wish to move society towards a utopian rather than a dystopian future. Because if we carry on allowing the appropriation of our data by private industry, if we continue to allow our technological progress to be owned by billionaires, yet be driven to a large degree by taxpayer-funded research and by centuries of interchanging ideas, then we're moving away from the abundance that technological progress could be creating towards a state of artificial scarcity. And if we implement an unconditional basic income in such an environment, my fear is that it will only serve to further enslave us. So the conditions that universal basic income is implemented in, like the larger picture, is incredibly important. And democratizing sources of wealth and decentralizing power are key to a free society. This is actually one of the most important, one of the most exciting things about a universal basic income is that it is unconditional. And so it decentralizes the state's power over its citizens. It empowers the individual economically to make free choices. Now, we saw very clearly in the Icelandic government's economic packages in response to the COVID crisis here in Iceland that the entire focus of the funding was on bailing out companies rather than the individuals affected by the crisis. About half of the money went to the tourist industry. First, the government paid companies to keep staff on their payroll, just to then later pay the same companies more money to help them fire the same staff. So people were forced to rely on unemployment benefits that are less than 40% of the median income in Iceland, with little flexibility for earning more to make ends meet. Now, this is a country where the cost of living is more than 30% higher than, for instance, in the United States. So if people wanted to work, their benefits were stripped away from them in a heartbeat. And this during a global pandemic, incredibly difficult situation in society. And to add insult to injury, corporations in Iceland were encouraged to tell on people, to tattletale, if they didn't accept any job they were offered. So with no regards to the individual's own desire to work for said companies. This was like a huge thing in the media here, where companies were kind of complaining that people weren't taking jobs that were being offered. And it didn't matter whether a person had interest, experience, or education that fitted the job. If they didn't accept, they were stripped of their benefits. So the pandemic introduced a perfect opportunity to remove these conditionalities from unemployment benefits. Sadly, a lot of people lost employment and needed the flexibility to take on and try new projects without the risk of losing unemployment benefits. About half of the COVID economic packets in the year 2020 went to tourism service companies, which is one of the pillars of the Icelandic economy, along with fisheries and aluminum smelting. So from about roughly 475 million euros, totally the tourism received 237 million euros. And who knows what would have been created if we had invested directly in people rather than propping up mostly large tourism companies that had in the past paid out monstrous sums in dividends to their stockholders. So it's just another example of how our current system privatizes profits, but always nationalizes the losses. And this is, in my mind, a lost opportunity to spur innovation from the grassroots up, if we just thought about things a little bit differently. So I'll just add a little bit thoughts on policy for the future from kind of an Icelandic perspective. One of the more straightforward ways for us in Iceland to move towards a universal basic income is to do it with tax reform. So take, for example, the personal tax allowance, a tax discount of a fixed amount, regardless of how high a person's salary is, that everyone is entitled to, but not everyone utilizes fully due to unemployment, low salary, or other factors. With a relatively simple change in the tax code, Iceland could pay the tax allowance amount out to those that don't utilize it, and in that way implement a negative income tax. So everyone is entitled to a personal tax discount in Iceland, so we believe everyone should be able to reap its benefits. And by doing so, we would be able to take a small step towards providing everyone with basic income. The amount presently is quite small, but we could raise it in steps with the goal of reaching the level of basic income. So instead of a tax allowance, we could start calling it a tax dividend, for example. In today's economy, this change would be of especially good use to students and other groups who have little or no income, as well as being a kind of gateway for the reimagining of our social systems. The tax dividend could become a launch pad for further reforms in this direction as we move from tax deductions and benefit systems towards a universal basic income to ensure that everyone, regardless of their status or wealth, has kind of an equal, unconditional access to the resources necessary to survive and thrive in modern society. To close, I would just say to you, as I repeatedly tell my colleagues in Alþingi, and I think that you're probably most of you on the kind of the same page in this regard, but really if we want to invest in the future, we have to invest in its people. So thank you for listening.
Thank you, Halldóra, for that presentation.